The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good evening, listeners. Fantastic time. It's Monday evening, and I want to share something very cool that happened last week. So last week on Friday, I had been inviting as the opening speaker for a GPS Executive Conference to share people as to how you can become a best-selling author and a recognized expert that people can relate to, that people can connect to. We are not talking about influencers who have millions of following. I'm talking about an influencer, a leader, where you step into the status of thought leader, but even you're making a difference to one person, and every single person matters. It is so critical. And what I wanted to share with you was that after it was over, it was just such a beautiful experience. And being an opening speaker for a virtual conference is just kind of different. And I want to bring that, especially today in the wake of elections. We have elections tomorrow. I want to share, we all are together, folks. No matter what we think and who we are and what we are doing, remember that. We are people, we are human beings at heart, and our humanity connects us all. So let's be together. And as we have talked previously, if you have not got your copy yet, get your copy of Expert to Influencer, and let's help from the profits, entrepreneurs impacted by COVID-19. So today, we are inviting a wonderful guest, Ashley Micciche. Welcome, Ashley.
Hi, Divya. Thanks you so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. So, Ashley, we usually start out a little bit, Ashley's a great person who advises financially small business owners where they can move and transition comfortably to the retirement. So as we are talking about that, let's go back to your childhood and start out there. So do you recall a moment when you were totally into finances, even when you were young, saving money, or was there any incidents in your childhood that moved you towards this journey?
Yes, actually, not so much finances specifically, but when I was about 8 years old, I started my first business. And so that, I was playing sports and doing all the kid things, but I was just really interested in making money and having extra money to buy things that I wanted. And so I started, it was called Ashley's Pet Plant and Paper Service. And when my neighbors would go on vacation, I'd pick up your mail and feed your cat and water your plants and do all those things. And I remember I charged $3 a day to do all this. And I thought, wow, that's so much money. But I loved it, and I did a good job, and I built this reputation as a reliable, person who, your cat would not die if you hired me. And so it led to some more success. And and clients and getting other people to do business with me. And so it was sort of infectious right away. And I did that for a couple of years, and I don't know, I just feel like from a very early age, I've always been very entrepreneurial, and it led to specializing sort of accidentally when I joined the financial advisory practice that my dad had started. When I joined him, I just naturally fell into working with business owners, and just found that I love it. Every entrepreneur, every business owner is unique. They're kind of wired a little bit differently, so it's a lot of fun. I really love what I do.
Mm. So that's interesting that you were reliable and focused on how to go about doing business and focus on money, and which is great. What happens is so many times a lot of entrepreneurs have expertise, and yet they shy away from asking for a sale or asking for closing because they think, oh, I'm not supposed to be money minded. And it's not about being money minded, it's about your relationship with money. It's about
Mm-hmm.
knowing that money, if spent wisely, can be really good. So, for example, I am very open and don't mind asking for a sale for my book because I know that it's going to help people. It's going to make a huge difference because I've got emails after emails and messages from the readers that it has impacted. And secondly, I'm able to help from the profits entrepreneurs who are impacted by COVID-19. So, what are your thoughts about relationship of entrepreneurs with money?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have complicated relationships with
Mhm.
money. And a lot of that is, from how was money treated in your household when you grew up? Like, how did your parents view money? How did they teach you about money? I find that our history, our personal history with money is very influential. And I think a lot of people tend to be mistaken about money and what their relationship should be with money. I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying to grow your business and have wealth and all of those things. And as I like to point out to people, what the Bible says about money, money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. And so having that right relationship with money is obviously really, really important. And so that's one of the things that I help my clients with, is helping them kind of redirect their relationship with money if it's not where it needs to be. A lot of times, even entrepreneurs, they might be spending too much, they might not be saving enough, they might be saving too much, and so we want to help them kind of reorient their money with what their values are, which those things oftentimes are not aligned. And so that's a big part of our job and what we help our clients with, because it's not my job to tell you as my client what your relationship with money should be or what you should be doing with your money. It's more about helping you align your values with what you're doing with your wallet.
Absolutely. So you talked about relationship of money depends on how it was viewed and how money was traded at home. So when you were young, what impression was left on you?
Um, yeah, so I have a unique background because my dad has always been a financial advisor, and he's always been interested in investing in the stock market. He and my mom are both, very responsible with spending and saving and sort of checking all the boxes and doing all the right things. So we didn't talk about money very much growing up. But I remember he really encouraged me to take an interest in investing when I was little. For my birthday one year, I was probably like 10 or maybe 11 years old or something like that, and he bought me Disney stock. And back then, if you bought Disney stock, you could still get a stock certificate, like a physical certificate. And the Disney stock, it was kind of fun because it had all the Disney characters on it. And I remember I was like, I'd rather have like a real toy or something. I don't really care about owning this stock certificate, but and I have no idea what happened to the stock certificate. I probably turned it in, and I don't know what I did, but I don't have it anymore. But yeah, he definitely encouraged me to save and spend appropriately and investing as well. Although growing up, I wasn't that interested in it until I got to college, and I became very interested in finance, but more from the relationship side and helping people manage their money and plan for their own retirement.
So as you moved from your college into deciding your major, had you declared that finances was going to be a major straight away?
No, I kind of chose it by default. Having a business background and oh, sorry, my son just
Oh
walked.
no. Hello, buddy.
Can you say hi? Yeah, it wasn't until very late in college when I had to choose a major that I chose finance. And so I sort of chose it by default. I actually enjoyed it a lot, and it just sort of fit my skill set. I liked math, I liked the relationship side, and finance was sort of the perfect marriage of those two things. Even though I still wasn't sure at that point what I wanted to do when I left school.
Well, as it happens, as you said it beautifully, that it was the perfect marriage. And of course, we have a wonderful young partner here. What's your name?
This is Cameron.
Hello,
Where's your
Cameron.
grandma?
And
Go find grandma. Okay, go find grandma.
Grandma. Oh, that's. Oh, I love that sound.
I told you I was afraid this might happen.
It's absolutely fine, and especially when your kids are all grown up. I enjoy seeing the little guys.
Yeah.
Grandma's
not coming.
Okay, go see grandma. Go right now. Go.
Well, our listeners are asking, is he about the age when you had your first business? I think so. You were 8. He's what, probably 3, 4?
My son, he's 3. Yes.
He's 3, yeah.
Yeah.
A little young, and folks, we have a wonderful participant.
I'm sorry. Let me.
It's okay. Why don't you hold him in your lap, and it's totally
find
fine.
an adult.
It's okay. It's all right. It's totally fine. That's part of
Oh, go with daddy.
That's part of being on a mom's podcast. Totally okay.
All right.
Okay.
My husband figured out that he was in here, so I think we won't have any more interruptions, hopefully.
Ashley, it's totally fine. It gives us a couple of, a good break into just a normal conversation we're having. So once you moved out of college, what was your next step?
Yeah, so after I became a finance major, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. I never intended to join my father in his financial advisory practice from the beginning. And then when I was towards the tail end of college, I thought, well, I'll give this a try and see how I like it. And so right away after I graduated college, I joined him. He was working for a big firm at the time, a large financial institution. I joined him, and that was 13 years ago, and a lot has changed since then. We're still working together, but we left the big firm we were with, and almost 3 years ago now, we started our own independent business, our own financial advisory practice. And we did that primarily because we weren't able to go deep with the business owner clients and really help them with exit planning and business valuations and retirement plans in the same way that we can help them today. So that really drove our decision to leave and find and start our own independent practice so that we could work with our business owners in a way that was consistent with our values and we knew would bring them value as well.
Well, we have a few questions from our listeners. One is, do you think Cameron is going to follow your footsteps?
I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. He wants to be a construction worker at this point, so who knows? But yeah, he's very bright. He kind of scares me a little bit, but he's gonna be definitely be a class clown. He's smart and he's funny, but he's mischievous as well. So we'll see how that translates to career skills when he gets to the working world.
Well, and a couple of other questions, I think so they're along the same lines. One is it hard working at home? And then the next one is, do you find it hard to work with numbers when the kids want your attention?
Well, thankfully, I have plenty of babysitting help. So my mom and my mother-in-law both live close by. My mother-in-law lives within walking distance of our house. So and we have a part-time nanny as well. So I'm able to work. I'm on maternity leave right now because as we were talking about earlier, I have another baby. He's 6 weeks old. And so, it is challenging right now because I'm just not able to work having a young newborn that much, but that's okay. I'm more than happy to kind of set that aside a little bit for the time being. But yeah, I don't find it that challenging. I mean, it definitely was an adjustment when COVID started because I'm in Oregon, and so here pretty much everything was shut down at the end of March, and my daughter was home from school and sort of figuring out all of that and how I was going to do distance learning with her, which was like banging my head against the wall and then continuing to work. And because of COVID, because we nobody knew like how um dangerous it was as a disease, for a long time, I didn't have that babysitting help. And so that the beginning stage of COVID, I'd say for the first like month to 2 months was really frustrating, really challenging, really scary. It was scary for our business too because our revenue dropped substantially right away. So we're not we're not immune to it as most Americans have, I think, suffered quite a bit in a variety of ways because of COVID. So but it's been an adjustment, and I feel like things are mostly back to normal, even though it's a lot of it's still shut down. It's just like, we adjust to the new normal.
Well, that's right. And it's about one of our listeners is asking any advice on growing patience while working at home. So, folks, here's what I'll say, that always flip the coin and say that, okay, you are healthy, your kids are healthy, and they're running around. Yes, it's tough. And yet, we've got a lot to be thankful for. So, I found gratitude to be really one of the most important things that has kept me sane going through this time. What about you? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I struggle a lot with patience, and but I've been focusing a lot on it. So I think, focusing on cultivating patience and using opportunities of frustration, and like just now when my son came in, I mean, that's pretty frustrating to have that happen. And but it's like, no, it's okay. And if I react, if I get really upset or if I get stressed out, I make the situation worse. So I have control over myself and how I react. I don't necessarily have control over other people or my son or whoever. But I find that if I can sort of contain myself and have a bit better control over my reactions to things, it helps from getting the situation, from it going out of hand, for it turning into this big blow up or a meltdown, especially with kids. It's just, they're so unpredictable. So I've actually, COVID has been a really excellent opportunity to work on patience. That's for sure.
See, you're absolutely right. There is that silver lining. There's so much that has impacted our lives, and yet at the same token, if we kind of think about it, there's so many people, like so many of my clients have shared that we would be at work for so long and would not get to see our kids, and now to be staying at home and being worried that, oh my god, my kid is going to disturb me. That has been such a blessing, that anytime we get upset, we go back to thinking that, oh wow, I get to see all the new things that are happening in my kids' lives. I get to be there for them and yet work. And it's about creating that boundaries and creating that structure for your kids and for yourself. And especially, if they're anywhere over 4 or 5 years old, and even if they're going to school, and teaching them and learning them how to cohabit and co-work together. So one of the other questions is, in your line of work, is it hard to be a working mother?
I think it's always hard to be a working mother. Yeah, I was actually thinking about this the other day. When I was in my late 20s, I actually wasn't 100% sure that I even wanted kids because I was so focused on my career. But I'm so glad that I made the decision to have children because I love my children. I wouldn't change them for anything, and it's just I just love it. And I realized too that um having kids helps to have, meaningful existence beyond working and beyond the relationship that I have with my husband, and not let it wouldn't be meaningful, but it just adds so much more spice to life. But yeah, I mean, especially right now on maternity leave, like it's really challenging to run a business that I'm just not there and I can't, be there. We have several employees and, I'm not there overseeing them. So I just have to also trust that my team is doing a good job and check in with them. And it means that I have a lot more flexibility with this maternity leave that I have. But it's sort of like maternity leave, right? Because I'm still working. I don't really get to take that time off completely, like I would be able to if I was working for, another company that I didn't own. But it also affords me incredible flexibility because I can kind of go back to work at a pace that makes sense for me and my business and my family and everything else. So I do have an incredible blessing to be able to kind of set that pace of what I want my life to look like and um, how I want to spend my time and where I want to prioritize spending my time, which right now is definitely my family first, but also focusing on my business too.
Hmm. And you talked about trusting your team members, and that's one of the other things. We're from working from home. A lot of people are working remotely, and there are a lot of business owners who are transitioning from having brick and mortar offices and working from home and staying connected with their, not only with their remote workers but with their clients. And so can you share, how did you transition into that phase, and what is it that's working well for you and helping you to stay connected with your team and with your clients?
Yeah. Well, luckily we were pretty well, I was using Zoom and all of those things before. Um, and so the transition, it was pretty much immediate. Like we went from being in the office full time to working remotely full time. And we have, including myself, we have 6 people on our team. And so it's definitely created more. I spend more time kind of talking to my employees and checking in with them. And than I would have when we were working in the office, because I have to be more intentional about those conversations, and making sure, we have a newer employee. She just started in August. So like today called her and said, do you have any questions on anything? Let's check in and see how things are going. But just that more frequent contact, which for me is definitely a challenge because it's like, I'm just one of those people. It's like head down, do my work, but then I have to like check in with different members of my team in different ways, and texting and phone calls and emails, and then with clients, a lot of our clients are close to retirement age. I'd say the average age of our client is probably like 55 to 65, in that range. And
Hmm.
so, a lot of our clients tend to be at risk for COVID anyways. And so that's been a challenge because I haven't been able, even though it's been a crazy time in the economy and for businesses, I haven't been able to meet in person with clients. And that's been, I think, harder on me than it is on them. But it just, it, it's just an adjustment. And, having more Zoom calls, and it's fun to see clients who aren't always the most tech savvy. They like know how to navigate all of the technology and the Zoom and everything else. So, um, it is what it is, and I don't think it's going away for a long time, or if ever. I think a lot of people will see the benefit of, oh, I don't have to get in my car and drive and spend half a day doing this or looking for parking, battling traffic. It's just much easier, and you can still have that face-to-face personal connection through the computer, although it's a little bit different.
Absolutely. So you mentioned about your clients being entrepreneurs at the age closer to the retirement. And so many times what happens is that as entrepreneurs, they've gone through tough times, and especially right now, so many people have lost a lot of revenue and because they've had to adjust. For example, like, initially we had, in my line of business, we had 3 retreats mapped out, like, high-end retreats for high-end clients. And we had to pivot. We had to change everything, and we did lose quite a bit of money because there were some non-refundables for some of the cruises and some of the things that we had booked, and a nice, couple of villas that we had booked by the ocean. So when these things happen, so businesses are in the place of surviving. Forget about thriving and thinking about retirement. So how do you go about recommending to these entrepreneurs that not only they become stable, but move towards saving and investing money for retirement?
Yeah, it is a challenge because for most business owners who are successful, their return on investment is a lot higher when they put it back in their business versus,
Mhm.
putting it in to their bank account, for sure, their bank account where, the interest is like nothing. But that's always a challenge. And there's nothing wrong with reinvesting back in your business, but the key with anything, with any investment, is diversification, right? So most business owners, especially successful business owners who that their business has value, it's worth something. Most of their net worth tends to be tied up in the business, and they have, so it's this illiquid asset. And then now it's this, when they get close to retirement, it's this big elephant in the room, right? Because it's like, well, what do I do with this?
Mhm.
I have to get something for my business if I want to retire. Otherwise, I'm just going to have to keep working. And sometimes that's fine. A lot of business owners, they want to continue working. They like, their business probably provides a good income stream for them. They enjoy what they're doing, but that's not the case for everybody. So, yeah, the key is to, you have this asset that's your business. But as you get closer to retirement, in your 40s and 50s, is that going to be too much? Is that asset now too big? And there are a lot of things that business owners can do as they get closer to retirement to really accelerate those retirement savings in other areas outside of their business. And they have a lot more options available to them than, say, the average working American who's an employee and doesn't have a business. So um, yeah, it's a common problem that business owners face. But the good news is there's opportunity. Just like you were talking about, business owners see opportunity, right? You had to pivot, and entrepreneurs, business owners are very good at looking for opportunities and not necessarily getting bogged down in the hardships that might come with forced changes like COVID.
Mhm. So you mentioned something about really good about diversification. So can you share some examples, some stories for our listeners so that they can learn a little bit about how can they take their assets and invest in diverse ways?
Sure. A client comes to mind right now. So I'm working with a client. We're working on his exit plan for his business. The business is worth in the range of 3 to 4 million. The real estate where he operates out of for his business is worth another 3 to 4 million. So he has the bulk of his assets. He has virtually no, especially when you compare it to the size of his business and the real estate that his business operates out of, virtually no other assets. So we're aggressively accelerating his retirement savings. So we're doing like 401k. We're starting a cash balance plan, which for him is going to be incredible because it's going to provide him a large tax deduction and allow him to catch up on retirement savings and basically get like 20 years of saving for retirement into 5 to 10 years. And so, those are the kinds of things that we help our clients with is, the exit plan isn't just about selling your business. It's what do we do with this business? What do we do with the real estate? What's the right thing to do? And then how do we make sure that if you don't get top dollar for your business or if things don't go as planned, you still have these other assets over here inside of the 401k account and other types of accounts that are going to provide you with an income stream in retirement because he does not want to work forever. He definitely wants to retire in the next 5 to 10 years. So that's the ideal time to really start to get serious about implementing an exit strategy for your business and kind of tightening things up as it relates to your own personal finances and dealing with the business. What's going to happen to that business when you get close to retirement and you want to exit?
Absolutely. So you talked about cash balance. Can you expand a little bit more on that?
Sure, yeah. I love talking about cash balance plans because it's a very novel concept to most people. So, if you are a business owner and you have a 401k plan, you can kind of like bolt on an additional retirement plan for your business, and it's a cash balance plan. So, what it allows you to do is, as a business, you can put substantial contributions into the cash balance plan. So, business owners can save six figures, much higher than, like a couple $100,000 plus inside of their retirement accounts by utilizing a 401k and a cash balance plan together. And you have to have good cash flow in order to sustain those kinds of contributions. But if you're a successful business, you have good cash flow, you're profitable, you can make it work and cram, just a few years worth of saving into those accounts and allows you to catch up. So it's a great opportunity. It's kind of like a hybrid between like a traditional pension plan and a 401k plan. But the tax laws around these were clarified about 15 years ago. And so since then, they've absolutely exploded in popularity. But they're great, ideal for someone who is getting close to retirement and has good, strong cash flow in their business, wants to catch up and wants a massive tax deduction for their business as well. So it hits all of those key things that a lot of business owners who are close to retirement are looking for. But very few CPAs, very few financial advisors know about these and how they work. So they're seldom recommended to their clients. And they're leaving a lot of money on the table as far as tax savings opportunities and opportunities to save for retirement. So I try to like preach the gospel about cash balance plans whenever I can.
No, and it's a great point that you shared that, one of the key things that I have found is having good cash balance along with the profitability because, and you can please correct me if my assumption is wrong. Once you set up these cash balance and 401k plans, you have to contribute to it every year. Is that right?
Yes, there is some flexibility. So if you fall on hard times, you don't have to, but ideally you would set them up with the intention to and the ability to contribute to them on an annual basis.
No, this is great information. Appreciate that. And one of our listeners had a question like, that you have a lot of things mapped out. So they wanted to know, do you have everything mapped out and when did you figure it out?
Oh, no, I'm going day by day. Well, I'm a planner at heart. It's funny because my kids' birthdays, like I don't have these big extravagant birthday parties for them, but I have like a 20-point checklist of all of the things that I need to do, like order cupcakes and get the balloons and do all these things. And it's so everything I will kind of sketch out. And when I was planning for this baby that I just had, I had like 100 things on my checklist, like things I needed to do by month when I was still pregnant. And I would sort of, it's very satisfying for me. I'm very like, type A OCD, like checking the boxes, and it felt good to get things accomplished, and to be organized and ready for when my baby came, because I knew it would be chaos with adding a third child into the mix. But then on top of that, if I didn't have the diapers and the wipes and everything else, it's like I needed to get that in place. And so yeah, I love to plan, and it makes me well suited to doing what I'm doing professionally, because I really enjoy the process and the creativeness that comes with building and designing exit plans for clients. Every business is different, every owner is different, and so they have different priorities and different goals. And I love that challenge of trying to figure out, okay, what is going to work best for this particular owner. We might have the exit plan might be 10 items, it might be 50 items, and but it just depends on the situation and the business and the owner. And my brain hurts sometimes, dealing with all the complexities of that, but it hurts in a good way, and I really enjoy it.
It's how should I say, it's what you have mentioned is it's great. And you talk about checklist. Do you have a checklist? And it doesn't have to be like, right in the order of 1 to 10, but even few things that business entrepreneurs should kind of take a look at as they prepare for their exit planning.
Yes. So the first thing we always do with business owners, no matter what, is help them value their business. And we actually do this before business owners even like sign on the dotted line and hire us to build their exit plan, because we want to know what the business is worth. Everything else kind of flows from that. Um, and so that's the most important thing. It's foundational. So we have to do that first. So that's number one on the checklist. And then after that, it can go in a lot of different directions, because from there it's going to depend on how do they need to sell their business, do they want to sell their business. Those are two very different things. We talked earlier about needing to sell because they needed the money from selling their business for their retirement, but that's not always the case. And then there are three general paths to exit. A selling to an outside third party, selling to a employee or a group of employees, or transferring the business, selling the business, or gifting the business to family. And so there are a number of considerations with each of those, but we want to figure out what the preference is, and then things kind of flow from there as well. So those are kind of the big things, is figuring out what the business is worth, what the ideal exit path looks like. And if we need to change exit paths later, that will sometimes happen, but we want to know what the ideal sort of end goal is when this business is transferred. What does that look like? Who owns it? What's that ideal scenario? What will you have pocketed in terms of the after tax value that you walk away from the business with? So those are all very, very important questions to answer in the initial phases of the planning process.
Mhm. Definitely. And in the beginning, you referred to values. At least a couple of times, when you talked about, once when you talked about you had joined your dad when he was working for a larger firm. And then secondly, as you transition into your own firm, where the values came into play. So can you share with us, like what are your top three values?
Yes. Well, um, definitely, I grew up Catholic, and my faith was not really a strong part of my identity or who I was until my late 20s, and then my faith became very, very important to me, and so that would be the top value is faith and my relationship with God, and making sure I'm putting God first place in my life. And then from there, it's family, my relationship with my husband and my kids, and then the rest of my extended family. And it's kind of fun because I get to work with my dad at work, and so those things are kind of blended together a little bit. Um, and then work, those would be like my top three values is my faith, my relationship with God, my family, my children, and then my career. And what I try to do as much as possible is making sure that, okay, well, I say that these are my values. Am I spending my time in a way that's consistent with what I say is most important to me? Um, and so that's the challenge. Like earlier, we were talking about the work-life balance. I mean, that's really the hard part is you say one thing and then you do another. But I try as much as possible to make sure that how I'm spending my time is reflective of what is truly the most important to me.
Hmm. So you have talked about values that are important to you. Ah, we do have another question. Where do people find their values?
I'm sorry, I missed where do people find their values?
Where do people, or I think so, probably the question is related as to how can people find their values?
Ah, well, I read a book probably 4 years ago that I highly recommend. It's called Off Balance. Matthew Kelly is the author, and this book was absolutely a life changer for me because what it helped me do is really identify in all of those areas. It's kind of consistent with all of us, right? There's, spirituality, family, friends, having fun, work, I'm trying to health, that's always a big one. Um, you know, everybody's set of priorities is different, and sometimes it will change and shift too. Like if I'm having a serious health condition, that all of a sudden goes to the top of my priority list is dealing with that and focusing on my health if I need to. But that book was it's a very practical guide. The premise of the book is that, we don't necessarily want a balance in our lives. We want satisfaction. And sometimes it's okay to be out of balance because what we're doing is bringing satisfaction, it's bringing meaning, it's bringing fulfillment. So it's all about helping to discover, like, how do I align my values, what's most important to me, with how I'm actually spending my time. And so there's some exercises in the book to kind of help you prioritize, and rank in order. These are the things that are most important. These are the things that are least important. And what it helped me to do personally is I tend to take on too much. Um, and then I realized, like, oh, these some of these things that I'm doing and I'm devoting time to are not bringing me, meaning and fulfillment. And in fact, it's forcing me to say no to spending more time with the things that do matter the most to me. So I need to sort of let those things go. And that I highly recommend that book to anybody, especially if you feel like you're stretched really thin, which I definitely did at that time. But it's a great book. It's called Off Balance, and I love it. I don't know why it's a popular book for sure, but I don't know why it's not, the most popular book, because I've read a lot of books on that sort of topic, and that one was truly a game changer.
And yes, folks, books can help. We are nearing close to the end of our show. So, can you just share the name of the author?
Yes, Matthew Kelly, Kelly.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And one of the questions, listeners, you asked was a very profound question. How do we position values? Here's what I will share with you is that it's really critical to have your values become the rudder of your life, because when values become your charter, that will impact your decisions, and your decisions will impact your actions, and your actions will determine your results and the quality and significance of your life. So definitely, thank you for sharing, Ashley. And if anybody would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way of doing that?
Yes. So, as I mentioned earlier, any business owner out there who wants to find out what their business is worth, we make that available to anybody who wants to go through that exercise. It's pretty quick and easy. It takes about 10 minutes to get a good ballpark value for your business. So the best way to do that is to go to truenorthra.com/value my business. And all of our contact information is there as well. So I'm happy to talk with any of your listeners who have questions about their business valuation, how to navigate the exit if they're getting close to starting to make some of those decisions.
We have one quick last question, listeners, that we will take is, what about businesses that are just in the startup stage?
Oh, good. That's a really good question. I get that a lot. And I always say, if any of your listeners have read Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think I'm hopefully getting that right. But, one of his messages was begin with the end in mind. And so even for business owners and entrepreneurs who are in the startup phase, in the early phases, it's still very important to run your business while planning for your exit at the same time. And so, that can be as simple as building processes and procedures so that your small business doesn't just revolve around you or doesn't live in your head. That's a very practical way that it can help your business thrive while also setting your business up for a successful exit when you do finally get to that point. So if you're thinking long term, if you're thinking with the end in mind, it will lead you to make those important decisions that will impact you both today and down the road.
Mm-hmm. Great point and great questions. Listeners, you guys are just amazing. Always being involved. And folks, we are at the end of our show, and we'll definitely catch on next week as well and answer it. So thank you, Ashley, for joining us and sharing some great insights with our listeners. And listeners, thank you so much for joining and always being engaged. Love you guys. And thank you, Rebel. Until next time, take care and be well.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week, Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time.